Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Crazy Money. On this week's episode, we attack and unpack the issue of money in college sports. As you may or may not be aware, up until last year, no college athlete could legally, officially accept compensation for playing a sport at his or her college. Well, that all changed last year with the Supreme Court ruling that now allows college athletes to be compensated for the use of their name, image, and likeness. And so thus entering the picture are outside groups with a lot of money that they want to give to college athletes. This includes brands like Dr. Pepper, Adidas, Degree Deodorant, and dozens more, and organizations called collectives, which are groups of donors and alumni who want to contribute directly to the athletes so their teams win championships, right? It also is interesting because each state in our union is approaching the issue differently. So the laws differ by state and by institution. Here to break it all down for us is Darren Rovell. He is a sports reporter that you might know best from his 18 years on the air with CNBC and ESPN. He is now a senior executive producer at the Action Network. He's been writing and talking about college sports since he was in college at Northwestern, and he's going to break down the good, the bad, and the ugly of the name, image, and likeness issue, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Also, to help us understand how the different stakeholders operate and think, joining us is John Staton, who is the Director of Operations at Classic City Collective, an organization of donors and alumni dedicated to helping the athletes at the University of Georgia, which John used to be. He was, in fact, a member of the Georgia Bulldogs 2021 National Championship football team, and so he's got a unique perspective on the whole issue. On today's show, Darren, John, and I discuss how the transfer portal effectively makes every college player a free agent. We talk about how many NIL deals are happening, who they're happening for, and how big they're getting. We discuss how collectives interface with athletic departments. We talk about whether money might poison relationships in the locker room within teams, and just what this world might look like 5 years down the road. It has already changed college sports so much in just like a year and a half. Who knows what the future holds? I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Darren Rovell and John Staton. Darren Rovell, welcome to Crazy Money.
Thanks for having me.
Darren, let's go back in time to put some context around the name, image, and likeness issue. In 2010, USC running back Reggie Bush had his Heisman Trophy revoked because he violated NCAA rules by accepting gifts from a pro sports agent. In 2014, UGA's Todd Gurley was suspended for profiting off of his own autograph. Let's say a college football fan fell into a deep sleep right after these issues and woke up on January 1st, 2022. How has that world changed?
So the world has changed immeasurably. I mean, just to give you some of my background, I've been covering sports business since 1999. And in 2003, I had spoken to Carmelo Anthony, who had just won the national championship. And he had said, well, I know what my number is, and I know that's the only number available in the Syracuse bookstore. And that is not a coincidence. So for a long time, it had manifested itself in two areas, jerseys and video games. Video games because EA had basically loaded the data into these video games. And when Kent State had a player who was 5'4", and believe me, there's not many 5'4" football players. When you went to EA Sports, the running back was 5'4". That is not a coincidence. And players thought this. So really, the complaints had been in video games and jerseys, which is funny that even today, now that we have an NIL, very few schools are offering video games and jerseys, and that's not where players are now profiting.
Who was profiting off those, the use of those limits?
EA, the bookstores, the schools. The schools would always argue that it's not the name on the back, it's the name on the front. And if you took off all the elements of our jerseys, it would be worth zero. But there was the opportunity at some point, if the NCAA would have allowed it, to say, oh, let's do a half-half deal. So basically what had happened is you had these jersey things going on. Tim Tebow was selling thousands of jerseys, and obviously, it was clear that it was Tim Tebow, even though you didn't put the name on it. The NCAA says you can't put the name on it. And so what happened was the NCAA stuck to their guns. Well, everyone I had ever interviewed said, we're looking into it. We're looking into the jersey thing, this and that. And the NCAA stuck to their guns. And so what then happened after Reggie Bush and the everything that you mentioned, Todd Gurley, was that schools after 2015 started shying away from even doing the jersey thing connected to the player with the number. So then you could walk into the bookstore and then you could only get number 1 and the year it was in. So the idea was, okay, let's stop doing this. That's the way we do it. And fans kind of revolted in a way, because if you look at the sales went down. Why do I need to buy a new jersey with the number 1 on it or the year? I want the player number. So it wasn't even giving the fan what they wanted. Johnny Manziel hit. I was part of reporting that he signed autographs for money. There was Jameis Winston. And so at some point, the fervor got big enough and the lawyers kind of locked in. There was a video game lawsuit. There was the Ed O'Bannon lawsuit, and eventually the killer, which was the restricted earnings lawsuit of the coaches, of players rather. And that's really what the death knell was here. After the NCAA lost the Supreme Court case that said you cannot restrict earnings, name, image, and likeness was all of a sudden on fire and ready to go. The states then made their own decisions as to what they wanted to do. And, if you looked at it, most of them were okay, these guys can pretty much do anything, and let's just go. So this is the craziest thing. You say, imagine if you woke up from a deep sleep. Well, what about me? I'm covering this for 21 years.
Right.
And on June 30th, 2021, for my entire reporting life, you better not, from the day I started, from the day I left Northwestern in 2000 to June 30th, 2021, ironically my birthday, you better not send a direct message to a recruit. I mean, you better not offer him a car dealership deal or something else. Yet, on July 1st, 2021, oh yeah, you DM those guys, you offer them a deal, as long as the school doesn't need to know about it until you sign the contract, and then they need to see the contract. It is the wildest thing. And I had thought for a long time that the NCAA would have some sort of third-party administrator that would say whether a marketing deal was legit or not, right? Because we're talking about the recruiting scandals and everything else. If I'm a car dealer and I'm an Oklahoma State fan, yeah, I'm gonna give the guy, what are we gonna do? I'm gonna give the guy $800,000 to show up once. And I always thought the NCAA would have a clearinghouse that would say, well, is this within the range of what is acceptable? But then I just told you about this Alston case, which is restricted earnings, and they can't do that anymore because they can't say what's acceptable. They're not allowed. So all of a sudden you have all of these marketing deals. A lot of them don't make sense. And to me, that was fine. Because it was still name, image, and likeness. So the interesting thing is almost everyone who had done these deals, it doesn't pan out. The quarterback from Clemson, signs a Dr. Pepper national deal. Clemson's not good. The quarterback from Miami, Derek King, is the face of NIL. At 12:01 on July 1st, he signs 5 deals. He founds a company about NIL. 3 games into the season, he's out. He's hurt. He's not playing. Then you have Sam Howell, the quarterback from UNC. He gets a couple deals. He gets an autograph deal, maybe worth into the 6 figures. UNC has its worst season in a couple years. Then you got the quarterback from Oklahoma, Spencer Rattler, who has all these deals. He's the first one to sign autographs for money in person at the National in 2021, the National Sports Collectors Convention. 5 games into the season, he's replaced. He's not playing anymore. He transfers. It just goes on and on and on. JT Daniels. Georgia wins the national championship. JT Daniels, the quarterback. Guess what? He's replaced by a walk-on who wins the national championship. and he has a autograph deal, card deal, maybe worth more than $1 million. So what then happens in these first 6 months is almost like a buyer beware situation, right? Where it's like, okay, now what happens if I'm in Norman, Oklahoma. I did a deal with Spencer Rattler for cars. He's now not the quarterback. Where is my protection here? And then, and I'm sorry I'm rambling, but there's just so much here. Then you have to think about the contracts of this. These contracts cannot in any way be tied to performance on the field. Cannot in any way be tied to performance in the field. Cannot in any way be tied to enrollment. So lawyers are saying to me, well, how the heck do I sign a deal? I went to, like a lawyer says, I went to law school and these contracts are not legal. Like you can, how can you basically say, Spencer Rattler, we're giving you $500,000. It's not tied to your performance. Tomorrow you could leave Oklahoma. We have to give you the $500,000. How is that going to work? And so it becomes like and that's only the first part. And then of course we get into collectives.
Let's talk about that, because this is where the money is coming from. If with the exception of like Dr. Pepper and Bojangles and big brands, the big money doesn't come from the schools. It comes from collectives. What is a collective, and who's involved with these things?
So, basically what happened was, for since the beginning of time, there have been these booster clubs that are kind of tied to the university, kind of not. The university acknowledges it. But it could be a private organization. Sometimes they're profit. Most of the times they're nonprofit. But basically at some point, and it really started with Texas, how do we use name, image, and likeness to get a kid to the university? Now, this is despite the fact that the NCAA says you cannot use name, image, and likeness to induce a kid to come to the school. Well, everything's already hairy to begin with. So what's wrong with more hair? Basically these collectives start and they say, let's just make a kitty of funds and let's figure out how much we can raise. And then we'll determine like how to fake the NIL deal, whether it's charity or not. We'll also, backdating of paperwork has always been a thing where guy signs with an agent before a bowl game. Well, he really signed a month before, but you sign it that you date it. You date it 1-1 after his bowl game. So all these collectives say, hey, the key power is now we can legally induce. Well, now we can induce a kid using NIL as our guise. And so Tennessee reportedly raises $18 million, these Tennessee boosters. Now, what's interesting about all this is I told you about the dichotomy between, or the juxtaposition between June 30th, 2021 and July 1st, 2021. It's almost like the same thing. A lot of the state laws in some states provide that these groups and cannot be talking to the schools. What? So if you're going to induce a player, who's deciding who to induce? Right? And like the coach can't know. Like what? Like who's, and you got these guys, either it's a collective or a booster. You got this booster down in Miami, John Ruiz, who seems like he is more of a mouthpiece to the University of Miami than Mario Cristobal, who's the coach of the University of Miami. And how do you deal with that? I mean, it's a whole runaway train. He's given all these deals, and I mean, it is completely. If we thought we had Wild West before, we are having Wild West 2, and it is just completely outrageous. So you have all these schools organizing these collectives, and you even have a collective at USC where USC is saying, "We don't want this collective. We don't even want this guy to raise money. He's never really given us real money. We don't want it." And he's like, well, I'm going to go ahead and do it.
Well, let's talk about some of the results of these collectives or the new reality. Okay, Texas A&M, and not coincidentally, these are all in Texas, right? So Texas A&M, Supposedly, the 2022 recruiting class is reported to cost about $30 million per year. University of Texas, every lineman, offensive lineman, which seems somewhat arbitrary, by the way, gets $50,000 to support nonprofit causes.
Let me tell you why that's not arbitrary. Okay, this is the craziest thing. So over the last 10 years, especially with Michael Lewis and Blindside and the importance of the left tackle. So with Michael Lewis, Blindside, offensive linemen are hard to induce because they don't really have any good marketing value. But they are very important to your recruiting class. So this was very strategic by these Texas boosters, starting what's called the Pancake Factory, just doing this because they need offensive linemen. And we're not inducing them, by the way. But if you are a scholarship player, you will get $50,000. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like that, to me, what was the craziest thing is the guy even admitted, who started this, that no offensive lineman ever got more than a 4-figure NIL deal. Okay, but now you're giving them $50,000
per year.
And then it's also like, oh, it's for, and it's also to do charity. What about the optics of paying money to do charity? So like all of a sudden, like these pictures of this kid showing up at a hospital with a sick kid, like, oh, he got paid $10,000 for that. Like, do people think about those optics? No, they don't.
So why? Okay, so let's talk about it. It might not be arbitrary that the offensive line gets paid, but how does the defensive line feel about the offensive line getting paid? And what does NIL mean for the product on the field in terms of intra locker room envy and not having we're all for one and one for all on the gridiron?
Well, that's why some coaches have said, you know what, I'm going to stay away from this. I'm going to try to. I'll give my guys as much as we can, but I'm not going to create a system I'm not going to be like Ryan Day at Ohio State, who throws out the exact number he needs, $13 million. Just the idea that the locker room could be fractured because of this. Now, there are some NIL people say, oh, this is just a narrative that is created by people who don't want to see this happen. It seems to me that, if you're a quarterback and you're getting all the money and what's enabling you to throw and be great is the offensive line, and the offensive line gets nothing or the defensive line gets nothing, there is some, it's not only about, hey, pay for a visit to reward the hogs at the steak restaurant. It seems like there will be some fracturing in the locker room. And that's why some coaches say, you know what? We're going to win the division because we don't have a lot of these NIL deals. That's what we're going to do, right? We're just going to win because we are a team, and this will create a whole lot of eyes.
So the gasoline on this fire, further complicating the human resources issues that coaches face, is the transfer portal. How is that playing into making this issue even more dire?
So I talked about the inducement, right? There, and how you cannot induce. The NCAA has had no rules on the transfer portal. The transfer portal over the past couple years enables a player not to sit out and to immediately play.
Which in the past, you had to sit out for a year if you transfer between school.
Correct. So now this creates a situation where a guy can graduate, he can get a 5th year, he can go somewhere else. And then entering the transfer portal essentially lets everyone know that you're a free agent. So now we don't have anything we have everything on inducement, but nothing regarding staying or leaving. And so you have a situation where what happens if there's a great school, not the greatest football school potentially, but it's in a big conference. Guy becomes an All-American and he wants to go to the best football school out there. Puts himself in the transfer portal, letting everyone know he's a free agent, letting the collectives know he's a free agent, letting the schools know he's a free agent, and then there's some sort of offer. So you have a situation, I'm a Northwestern guy, so you have a situation where there's a guy like Pete Nance, who is Larry Nance's son, plays well at Northwestern, and then goes on to UNC. The issue now becomes, how do you keep a person there? And how are these funds now keep getting guys to come to your university? And that complicates all, because if you are a school and you are a coach who develops great players, who turns 2 stars into 4 stars, once they're 4 stars, do they leave? And that obviously becomes a problem.
We talked about certain team-based deals, like at Texas and Texas Tech, where they're making $25,000 or $50,000 and $25,000 per year for community service. But there's just monster deals like Jaden Rashada's, the QB recruit for Miami, looking at a $9.5 million deal. You talked about Tennessee's quarterback looking at an $8 million deal.
Supposedly.
Supposedly, right? These are all rumored, and rumors beget rumors, and rumored deals beget bigger deals. How does it work for the average college athlete who's in a non-revenue sport?
Well, there's been a whole lot of bloviating about how this will help these guys. And I think there's deals here and there, but they're $1,000 deals. There's guys, there's a Division III player who's done like 100 deals at like $100 each, but this is not going to be the one thing that is different is with women. If there is a woman athlete who is essentially a model, or someone who has been able to build up their social media to this point, now they can benefit from doing things within their athletic world and sell themselves. So some of the most successful NIL deals have been the twins who transferred from Fresno to Miami, the Cavender twins, basketball players, and Olivia Dunn, the gymnast from LSU. I mean, these guys have cleared 7 figures, but it starts with the fact that they were big to begin with. That they have a lot of men following them on Instagram. And so those guys benefit, but the true non-revenue sport athletes don't really, get much from this. This is a rounding error in their world.
Well, now, the colleges are supposedly agnostic about all this. They're supposed to be staying away from it, but they do have to report these deals. And this puts them in a very awkward situation, especially when it comes to things like equity and trying to play fair. What does it mean for the college? Do they have to hire staff to administer all these things?
Yeah, well, they've beefed up compliance staff, but now the NCAA doesn't penalize anything because they're scared to do anything, apparently. But there has not been a huge run up in staff. What is the most interesting part to me, and you just said they do in fact have to approve these deals, is the people who they get in bed with, who they're not acknowledging that they're getting in bed with. Like, I could just start a collective and say and mooch their brand name. I'm going to start a Northwestern collective, and all of a sudden my brand gets involved with their brand. John Ruiz at Miami, he's part of a kind of a controversial stock that hasn't done well. His company Life Wallet has spent millions in marketing and has not reported anything in revenue yet. I'm all of a sudden becoming part of their brand. And that's the biggest issue for these schools. USC saying this guy, Dale Reck, that's starting Student Body Right, this collective, he's never given to the university. And Dale then saying, well, I've given, but they just haven't seen it. I've given in other ways. And how dare they describe how I am as a donor and how much of a fan I am. So that's also like a really dangerous part, that once they accept the deal, they're accepting. They could have always done marketing deals with the school. Hey, we're going to do it with this auto and whatever, and we're going to put it inside the stadium. There's always been that risk, and that auto dealership could sell 15 lemons, and then it associates with the university. But now it's like anyone, any day can start anything. And say that they're earmarking it to the school and or its players. And that's just another wild factor of this.
If you think about positive implications of this program, you might have to struggle to do that. One might be that it's just shining a light on what's always happened in college sports. And the other might be that being paid as a college athlete lowers the incentive to go to the pros right away.
Yes.
Do you buy that argument? Do you buy either of those arguments?
Yeah, some of it. Listen, there's a guy on the Illinois basketball team, Kofi Coburn, who, you get enough NIL money, he stays for a fifth year. And so you could be more developed. I do think that I'm not against, by the way, I am not against athletes getting paid money. I am against it not being name, image, and likeness and being called name, image, and likeness. I'm against the masquerading here. Like this is not what it was intended to be. It turned into a free market system. And by the way, I believe that will solve itself just by time. Tennessee raises $18 million. They go 6-7. Do you think they're going to have $18 million in 2023? I'm going to say no. So over time, I think there's going to be certain ways that this bears itself out. I am happy for the legit name, image, and likeness deals. But the free market stuff seems kind of sleazy. If you want to do free market, do free market. Call it what it is. Don't have these guys go to school. Don't have these guys go to school. We are professional, right? Younger professional league right under the major leagues. Don't have these guys go to class. Not worth it. They're just a representative of the university and they play for money.
What implication does this have for high school sports?
Well, it depends on what state you're in. If NIL is allowed in the state in high school, kids are going to start cashing in high school. Quinn Ewers, who is in Texas, Texas didn't allow high school guys to cash in. So he starts a little bit early at Ohio State and cashes in. You're going to have people you've had since the beginning of time. You've had kids transfer across state lines to play with the best teams. Now they're going to do that for NIL. And so, if the states are now going to fight for the best rules. I mean, in the beginning, people are like, wait a second. This state doesn't have a great rule with regards to the university, and the coaches and the administrators are going to the state and saying, this is actually hurting us. The other question is, would the state ever enforce anything that they make if they get the greatest recruit of all time through NIL? That's another thing,
right?
When Supreme Court justices in the state, when the state Supreme Court justices are the highest order of the state, have all gone to Louisville, are they going to? Are they going to rule that a violation was broken when the Cardinals get the best player? That's the other thing. So you're going to see people hopping around to states. You're going to see states getting more lenient. Everything's going to be open. You're going to get to do everything. The one main question is the NCAA going to do anything? And do they have the power to do anything?
Yeah, well, that's the question, right? What you say that the free market would mean the kids don't even go to school, but what is the regulatory body? And does the NCAA, does the Supreme Court ruling prevent them from playing any role as a regulator?
That's the problem. Are they just an umbrella organization? And over the years they became the enforcement organization. That's how they were defined. They were defined by being the enforcement organization. So if they aren't anymore, what are they? And then you say, okay, what else do they do? Well, they run the NCAA basketball tournament, but is that really that hard? They run 89 other championships. So the membership of the schools are paying the NCAA $600 million a year to basically run 90 championships. You could get a really good event planning a group to do that for about $10 million.
I'd go to work for them.
Then it becomes, what are the schools paying for? Right? And is this the end of the NCAA?
All right, predictions. 5 years out, what's the number of the highest paid collegiate athlete?
I mean, I think that Archie Manning right now is worth $15 million a year.
For the 4 years or
at least 50. Well, remember, now you got to keep him. $15 million to induce.
Right.
And then depending on how good he is, somewhere in between $2 to $5 million to keep him each year. I don't think this is sustainable.
Right. So the numbers will go up, but the curve is going to flatten based on what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. It is. Besides maybe the Live Tour and what's going on with the PGA and the Live Tour, I mean, over the past year, I don't believe what I'm reporting on. It is just wild. It is, imagine if you have a professional golf league who comes up against the incumbent and doesn't care about money and just buys everyone. Imagine if you have these boosters. I mean, it's almost the same thing. It's incredible. It's wild. It's hard to grasp, and it's happening so fast that no one knows what's going on, including me.
Okay. Besides pro golf and college sports, what's the next sport to be disrupted by money?
Oh, anything that, I think anything that has independent contractors, right? So like, tennis could easily see, because if you don't own the people, right? If you don't really own the people and they can freely move around, then those are the ones that are going to be most susceptible to being disbanded immediately. So I think tennis would be the next one.
But does that just close the gap between independent contractors and people who work for the NFL and have 10-year, $250 million contracts?
Maybe, but a business that doesn't make sense can only last for so long. Right? OpenSea right now is a ghost town. Okay. So even if it doesn't make sense, like, and even if Live Golf is funded by the Saudis that have $600 billion, like at some point it's like, what are you doing this for? Ego? So that's my thing. When a business is not a great business I think businesses figure itself out, and businesses that are not a great business eventually fail. Yeah, that's why I don't think that maybe the conferences get into paying these kids money, like all the kids get the same money. But I don't think over time that these collectives can be jumping up from 20 to 30 to 40 million and just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because it's not going to make sense.
Darren, that's a great point. I really appreciate your insights into this matter. It's wildly fascinating and evolving quickly. Look forward to seeing what happens from here. Where can our listeners and viewers find out more about you?
You can find me on the Action Network, where we cover these types of stories and gambling. I'm on Twitter at Darren Rovell and Instagram at Darren Rovell.
All right. We'll put links to those in the show notes. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks so much.
John Staton, welcome to Crazy Money.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me. Excited to be here, talk a little bit about NIL this morning.
Great. John, you're the Director of Operations for Classic City Collective. What is the mission of Classic City Collective?
So the mission of Classic City Collective is to become the first sustainable NIL organization in the country. By sustainable, we mean that we're not going out looking for donors to give us $50,000 a year to support these players. We're not giving $8 million deals out to these players. We're organically helping them with their NIL opportunities across all 21 varsity sports and all 540 athletes at the University of Georgia. We're trying to build a sustainable company to where we are organically creating these opportunities and maintaining these opportunities for years to come for these athletes.
So break it down for me. How does it work? Where does the money come from and where does it go?
So there's a couple different avenues where the money comes. One is straight from donor to the collective, which then is dispersed to certain athletes depending on what they have done to earn that money, whether that's a marketing deal, whether that's a sponsorship deal, whether that's actually being in person, doing an event, things of that nature. Two is that partnership sponsorship side. We just signed a deal with Truist. We've signed a deal with Prepaid Technologies. We've signed a deal with various companies within Athens and then within the Georgia footprint. And then three is the subscription model. So that's more of the fans subscribing to the collective, knowing that the money goes to benefit the student athletes, and then it's dispersed the same as a donor money would be as well. But the fans are, getting an incentive for subscribing.
So what kind of incentives do they get?
Depends on the level of subscription. I think our lowest level starts at $21 and our highest level goes up to $210 a month, just within club categories. So I think the first one's called the Varsity Club and the last one's called the Heisman Club. And you get various things like, meet and greets with athletes, discounts on the memorabilia shop, merchandise shop, hats, T-shirts, different things that, incentivize the donor to come back and continue to give to you month by month. And there's no limit on that either. If somebody wanted to come in and give $1 million a month, we'd be, more than welcome to that. Obviously, that's not unfortunately what's happening right now.
Come to think of it, I was wondering what to do with this extra $1 million a month that was burning a hole in my pocket. Now you've given me a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, somebody who loves the dogs and appreciates the performance on Saturday, if anybody's watching and they have that extra $1 million, feel free.
So you mentioned a few different corporations you're doing deals with. Can you give us an example of what, for example, like the Truist deal might look like? What are they interested in? What kind of value are you providing for the customer here? Yeah,
I mean, Truist obviously is interested in the student athletes. One, they're interested in their career at Georgia and then their career after Georgia, especially on the football team, basketball team, and baseball teams. We have a lot of people be successful going pro. You can even throw golf into that mix. But what they're interested in right now in the short term is really providing them proper tools to be be financially aware, be financially literate, and understand, the earning potential they will have later on in their career and what to do now to protect themselves and learn about how they manage their money. So they're coming in providing financial education courses for us, for all of our athletes. They're going to do it a couple times a year. And they see great value in that. Not only because there's potential for athletes to, go pro one day and have a good relationship with them and trust Truist and what they do and their practices, but also for the point that a lot of the people that don't go pro end up making more money than the people that do go pro. There's a lot of people that are athletes at Georgia that, end up being very successful because of what they've learned while they're, at Georgia in school. And then two, they learn a lot of life lessons playing sports throughout their college careers and meet a lot of really interesting people and carry those connections as well.
How do you coordinate with the athletic department on where the resources go?
So it's really determined in large part by us. The athletic department's pretty hands off when it comes to determining exactly where the resources go. Obviously, we are compliant with all of their guidelines. We're in constant communication with them. If things change on our side, they know, and vice versa as well. So that determination is really made by us, and also made by the athlete, what they're willing to do, the time they're willing to put into it, the deals that they're willing, are able to land, that we help them land, are also a big determination on that.
What percentage of the resources go to football?
It varies. I would say obviously I don't have an exact number, but it's high. But that's fair, right? Look at the revenue that football brings in compared to all the other athletic departments.
I'm down with it.
It's not a secret that football funds all the other athletic departments, and that's just, in many cases, people are more interested in the football players for doing deals. I think that we've maybe had more women athletes, do deals with us over the last 9 months. But I think that, obviously you see the larger deals come for the football guys.
What is a small deal, or what is sort of a not well-known Olympic sport athlete, a swimmer, volleyball player? What might they have to gain from the NIL practices and from Classic City Collective?
Yeah, so I think we provide them, one, like we talked about with Truist, a lot of opportunities to better themselves before their time in college is up from a professional standpoint, putting them in situations where they're able to meet people that are going to be beneficial for when their career in the pool or on the track or on the baseball diamond ends. But then two, they get to really be active and connected with brands that they like and try to get involved in places that they want to be in. So for what's your favorite spot in Athens? You had to go into Athens.
I did not go. I went to Rhodes College, and that's the thing I want to talk about is, well, where's the D3 money, John? Where do we get, free check cashing at the Brown Jug or free pizza from Miss Pat's for the Rhodes College athletes? What's happening at D3?
No, yeah, I mean, and listen, the D3 money, it might come, it might not come, but that's what I was saying. I mean, if you have been in Athens, you're going to have a favorite pizza spot. You've had to have traveled to Athens before. That's where they see the benefit, right? If I was somebody on the track team and my name wasn't that big, but I had the Georgia logo on, and I was semi recognizable, I would go to my favorite restaurant and say, "Hey, is there any way we can work out a deal? Let's create a nice incentive structure if I bring people in here to get me some free pizza." And in any cases, it's the little things that end up being the big payout for those athletes. But I mean, you really do see the top 1 to 2, 3% of athletes being, the top guys on the football team, top guys on the basketball team. In many cases, the top of the female athlete at Georgia making the big deals.
I talked to Darren Rovell earlier in the show about the transfer portal. You had a pretty unique experience that you transferred from Samford to the University of Georgia and actually played on the national championship team. How has the transfer portal improved your life?
Well, I mean, I'm thankful for the transfer portal. I don't necessarily agree with it, but in my case scenario, I was able to use it to benefit myself. I walked on at Samford University in 2017. I played 3 years there, earned a scholarship, had become the man I wanted to be. And when COVID happened, I realized that I had an opportunity to accomplish my biggest, goal that I had, which was playing under the brightest lights. And it just happened that I was able to have the opportunity to come home to Georgia and do it. So it really worked out well for me. You had to time it right. You have to be a resource, right? Just like any company, just like any big organization, Georgia is looking for people that are going to help them. They know that they can have an impact. And while my impact was not going to be starting at linebacker, I think Georgia knew that I had leadership qualities. I was going to work hard. I was going to be, good inside the locker room, and I had a lot of value to add on special teams. And so I walked on to Georgia again, and it all ended up working out. That's like, you got to take a chance on yourself. When you believe in yourself and you believe in your abilities, you can accomplish some really cool things. And it's been fun to experience that over the last 5 years.
What has your experience as an athlete taught you about NIL that maybe is missing from the media's coverage of the issue?
Well, I think this gets a little tricky. I think one, it's that athletes don't necessarily, and I don't want to use the care, maybe the wrong word, but it's not as important as people think, right? The winning football games, being with your brothers in the locker room, getting an education, having a social life, taking care of your family, those things are still more important than NIL. You don't go to Georgia for the NIL money. I hope you don't. I didn't. I don't think a lot of guys do. You go to Georgia to win national championships, and that takes a lot, right? It's a full-time job. You literally get 3 weeks off all year. You're still focused on it. It's a never-ending goal, and you always want to be the best version of yourself, and that's what Kirby gets out of those guys. So, I mean, those guys in the locker room aren't going in there and sitting in their locker after practice and saying, "All right, where can I get $10,000 from NIL?" They're saying, "What do I need to do better on this run scheme, or how do I need to have a better first read of the offensive line to get myself in a better position to make the play on defense?" The focus is still there, and I think people don't really understand that, and I think it's really important to show that these athletes are still focused on the goal at hand. Why everybody shows up on Saturday, why everybody gives the economy in Athens and Clemson and in Atlanta for these Georgia Tech games, why they're spending their money, and that's to see a good product. I think these football players at the end of the day are focused on putting the best version of themselves and the best product on the field, just like NFL players. I don't think that changes at all.
But we've read about, these $8 or $9 million quarterback deals at Tennessee and Miami. Do you think that at some point there will be jealousy or envy inside the locker room that could affect the product on the field?
I think if you let it, I think that's a big culture question. I think Kirby has done a fantastic job over the last 2 years creating a very dynamic culture, a very outward-facing culture. Worry about your teammates, don't worry about yourself. And I think that's really, been shown in the success they've had. But there's two things when it comes to those $8-9 million deals. One, are they actually going to get the money? How is it structured? Are they going to stay for 4 years? What happens if they don't start? The other part of it is you're promising this to a 17, 16-year-old kid. They could never play a snap of football on a college level. They couldn't handle, it's a lot of pressure, and a lot of times people can't handle the pressure. We saw that last year with the Clemson quarterback at the beginning of the year with the NIL money, and obviously playing Georgia's defense didn't have, wasn't the best thing for him. But, I think it's interesting. I would never, ever, ever give a 16, 17-year-old kid $9 million to come try and play football when you know that, you don't have the results given to you. So I think that's also an interesting part of it as well.
All right, John, I appreciate your insights into the NIL issue. We'll end with one question. Dogs had a big victory over Oregon last weekend. What's your prediction for the season?
That's a great question. This is my first live prediction, so I haven't really thought about it. I've been taking it week by week for the last 5 years. That's what they teach you over there. But yeah, I think there's a couple games that could get tricky. I think Florida's a good team, as you saw on Saturday. I think Tennessee is going to be a good team. They spread it out and they move the ball around a lot. I think we're going to go undefeated in the regular season, and I think we're going to get into the playoff, and it just kind of comes down to the draw. I think, as you saw, there's two teams that are in tier 1 this year in college football, and then there's Ohio State kind of in tier 2. But I think it's going to come down to Georgia versus Alabama again. You look at the stats, you look at their daily schedule and what they do. There's no surprise why Georgia has been able to replicate some of what Alabama has been able to do. The schedule's a lot of the pretty similar day to day. The recruiting patterns are pretty similar. I think they're clear cut above the rest. So I think it's going to be another dogs versus tide matchup, and we'll just have to see when that comes around who's more healthy.
John, where can people find out more about Classic City Collective if they're interested?
Yeah, you can visit classiccitycollective.com. You can also go to our various social media links. It's Classic City CLTV on social media. That's across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So feel free to check that out. It'd be much appreciated. And go dogs. And always remember to support your student athletes. They work hard and deserve what they're getting.
John Staton, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.